Today, I came across this video on my YouTube feed from Doublelift criticizing Kadrill's MSI tier list. And I had to make this video because I feel like so much bullshit goes on in the league space right now, especially with content creators. And one thing that I really hate is people going out and putting their opinion into the world or into the conversation without doing any of their due diligence, without watching games. I feel like you can have your opinion. Everyone can have different opinions. I'm fine with people having opinions, people having different opinions than me. All that stuff is all good. The one thing that I really hate is when somebody puts in 1/50th, 1/100th of the work of other people in terms of actually trying to figure out what is going on, watching games yourself, and then goes out and just shits on them for their take. So we're going to watch some clips of Doublelift reacting to Kadrill here, Kadrill's MSI tier list, and then I'm going to explain why I think that this is so fucking cringe and so disingenuous to go about things. So let's start it off.
Well, okay. Let's go see Kadrill's tier list. Kadrill MSI tier list. He put BLG.
That's a good tier list, bro. Like, let me say, like, I'm gonna make a tier list too. I might have some things different in terms of tiers, but this is an extremely good tier list in my opinion. I think this is very fair. I would say that this is completely defensible. Everything makes sense. Nothing about this is ridiculous at all. Like, I watched a little bit of Loud. I didn't watch PSG at all. So I have no clue where I would actually rank PSG. I've heard that they're pretty good. Maybe they end up being able to beat a second seed from, I guess, NA, because they won't have the opportunity to beat the second seed from EU because of the way that the brackets turned out. But I think that this is a really good tier list. So shouldn't be any criticism, right? Like, this is a guy who watches League perma, right? Like, Kadrill and I probably watch the most League in the entire world out of all co-streamers. We both cover four regions. I cover like borderline 5 with now doing like CBLOL. I did about 7 days of CBLOL over the course of the year, which is a fair amount of the split actually, because there's only 18 days of regular season. So yeah, I mean, I think that if you were to talk about this tier list, I could 100% understand the reasoning just from looking at this. I think BLG being the best team over GenG, I think this is preference, right? Like, if you were to ask Kadrill, why do you have BLG over GenG? I'm sure he would say something similar to what I would say, which is that the weakness of GenG is their bot lane. GenG has a like bad laning bot lane specifically, and BLG's biggest strength is their bot lane 2v2s and interactions with jungle. And you can definitely see a world with BLG playing against GenG where BLG wins the game hard through bot. I'm sure Kadrill would say something similar to this, because we actually watch the fucking games, right? Like, that's a very logical line of reasoning. So let's see what Doublelift has to say.
He put BLG higher than GenG and T.
He put BLG higher than GenG and T1. Ugh, like, that's such a crazy. Oh, it's like, how is that crazy at all? Like, no, like what? Like, it's just overreaction for content, I guess. Whatever, I'm fine with
T1, he's no, he's capping. BLG didn't show anything better than them. Maybe they did in the regular season, but in the finals that I just watched, it didn't show anything better than GenG and T1.
Okay, so in the finals that he just watched, so here's something funny. There's actually more games than just regular season and finals. So he didn't watch regular season, but he also didn't watch semifinals. He didn't watch quarterfinals. Like, he doesn't actually spend time seeing the trajectory of the team, trying to understand the fundamental playstyle of BLG and trying to understand why they might be a good matchup into GenG, why they could be the best team in the world. Instead, we just say, hey, I watch finals. Also, the term watching finals is so fucking loose. I went back to his VOD where he watched finals. He's like, yeah, I have no idea about LPL. I'm going to watch finals tomorrow. He just skimmed through the VODs of finals. He watched like all of finals within pretty much like an hour and 40 minutes, like an hour and a half, something like that. And he just like skipped through most of the VODs. Like, that wouldn't even qualify as a true VOD review. Like, that is not an in-depth VOD review. He didn't watch it live. He just like skimmed through the VOD and he's like, all right, bro, like, Kadrill is fucking capping, bro. Kadrill, like, what is Kadrill doing? BLG higher? What the f?
How the f are they in a completely different tier than GenG and T1? He might have been paid by CCP. Wait, is he farming?
I get that this is a joke, but I mean, he's clearly just disagreeing with it.
Social credit? What the f? Dude, check him social credit. This is, how are they in a completely different tier than GenG and T1? I could maybe, if I was like on some sort of hard drugs, I could see.
Or wait. Or if you watch the fucking games. Isn't that crazy? Wait, what happens if you just watch the game? It's like, maybe if I was on hard drugs, I could see this happen. It's like, or if you just watch the games like Kadriel did, like I did, you could also have such a similar take to this and understand why he's saying it. But instead, let's just say that that you have to be on drugs to see the game like this, to have this opinion. Sure.
Putting them in the same tier as GenG. I cannot see them being an entire tier above GenG and T1. It's LPL buff at MSI. He gave reasoning on stream. It's hard to judge based off of a picture. Okay. I think like maybe the X factor is just like how well the...
I bet you the same way that I just said what Kadriel's reasoning probably is, because that would be just the most logical reasoning. I bet you Doublelift would not be able to see that reasoning. Like if he wanted to be fair in this clip, he would just say that during the video. He's like, okay, so the reason why Kadriel thinks this is obviously because he's favoring like the bot side. And then if you were to make the argument for GenG, what would you say? You'd say, okay, well, the reason why I think GenG is better than BLG is because GenG will out macro them. They're going to rotate lanes. They're going to potentially even lane swap. They're going to make the game a macro heavy, lane assignment based game. And when it comes down to objective fights and mid game macro, GenG will just be too far ahead from these swaps for BLG to outplay them in team fights. And BLG will not be able to get the same leads over GenG that they did over top esports and other LPL teams, because GenG will refuse to match them in the lanes. Like, you'd make an argument like that. You'd say Chovy is the best player in the world. They're really good at funneling resources into him, and GenG's macro will overtake BLG. Like, that is the argument that you would make if you wanted to be on the GenG side of things. But it's like, we don't even watch the fucking game. We don't even watch the fucking teams. But then we're just like giving these opinions and like acting like Kadriel's opinions are ridiculous when these are just like pretty reasonable. Like, Kadriel is pretty fucking reasonable about the game, man. Like, I know that some people get mad at like his overreactions or whatever. Like, I don't think that Kadriel analyzes the game. When he does content like this, when he does a tier list, I don't think he does anything disingenuous. I don't think he panders at all to like any fan base. Also, the idea that Kadriel is like pandering to Chinese fan base, or he's pandering to the LPL or CCP or whatever. Like, obviously CCP is a fucking joke in the context. I understand that. But the fact that he would be pandering to LPL doesn't make any sense. Like, LPL has way less fans than LCK. And generally, when LCK and LPL are both on, Kadriel chooses to watch LCK over LPL. Like, I would assume that he likes LCK more than he likes LPL based off the content that he chooses to produce, right? So the idea that he would be putting this just to like pander to China is just such a fucking weird take.
Play versus the field, right? How well will you play versus every single team? And that's exactly why I think, I guess I'm just not that convinced on G2's supremacy over Fnatic. I feel like the strengths of G2 don't seem to work as well against like the field. He assumes GenG is going to choke and T1 Zeus is...
For context here, I went and I looked at Doublelift's actual tier list, Doublelift's MSI tier list. And in his MSI tier list, he had G2 and Fnatic over top esports. He thinks Fnatic is a better team than top esports based off what they showed. Look, maybe that could end up happening, but the reasoning for it is not there. As someone who watches the game for a living, I don't actually care if someone's predictions end up being correct or if their predictions end up happening or not. I care about the reasoning for why they predicted what they believed. The person who has the best pick'em at the end of the year most of the time is somebody who doesn't even watch the game. It's like pure RNG. Somebody has they're like, oh yeah, I had my girlfriend do my pick'em and she just ended up getting all correct. She was like, what? It was a 1 in a million correct pick'em. That doesn't fucking matter to me. What matters is like, why do you think what you think? How did you get to that conclusion? That's what actually matters. So even if this ends up being wrong from Kadriel, it's like, oh my God, G2 just wins MSI. If somebody has G2 winning MSI, but they're like, yeah, I liked G2 because Yike is Peruvian and I'm Peruvian, and that's why I had them. Like, if that's the reasoning, it doesn't mean that he is more knowledgeable than a fucking analyst. So the idea that, I mean, we have to see what happens. Like, let's see what ends up being correct. The point that I'm trying to drive home is, why are you talking out of your fucking ass? Like, if you're too lazy to fucking wake up and watch the games, and you're not going to actually VOD review because you find it too boring, then why do you give your fucking opinion at all? Like, I give my opinion because I spend my fucking life doing this shit. Kadriel gives his opinion because he spends his fucking life doing this shit. As a league content creator, just put out opinions and then like shit on other people's opinions when they do 50 times the work that you do. 50 is like, that's probably a low estimate. If you want to talk about like how much LPL, LCK, LEC Kadriel's watch compared to Doublelift this year, could be more like 100 times, legitimately. Like, I don't think Doublelift live viewed or co-streamed anything from these regions the entire year. So like, how are you even coming to these conclusions? You watched finals of one region? Like, I saw this comment that Forrest actually tweeted, and this is so accurate. Alternate title to Doublelift's MSI tier list is Doublelift ranks LPL and LCK teams based on watching one series from each region. Doublelift is so lost, bro actually said 369 and JackeyLove are bad players and LPL is just as good as LEC. The fact that Doublelift thinks that top esports bot lane has showed less than Fnatic's bot lane up until this point over the course of the year is just mind-blowing, bro. Like, this guy plays in bot lane. But the reason why it's not actually mind-blowing is because he doesn't watch it, so he's just talking to talk, I guess.
He's gonna ins. He's saying BLG is the best team in the world.
Let's go back.
The field. He assumes GenG is gonna choke and T1 Zeus is gonna ins.
I mean, why are we reading this comment, by the way? You think that Kadril, like, I've known this guy for years. Obviously, Kadril's my friend and Doublelift is somebody who I despise. So I am biased in this situation. But I think regardless of who these people are, the overall concept makes no sense. Like, there's no way that that's what Kadril said. There's no way Kadril said, yeah, I just think GenG is going to choke and Zeus is going to end. Like, what? That's not the logic. He probably gave comments about how Zeus has been playing recently. Like, Zeus had a bad final. Like, Zeus has some issues with his champion pool. He hasn't been able to play everything in the meta right now. Like, he hasn't played Rek'Sai to a decent level. His, like, Udyr wasn't good earlier in the year. Feels like he is, like, a niche counter pick type of guy. And when that type of stuff gets banned out, it becomes a lot harder for him to function, as we saw in finals. This could be something that would be more reasonable. I don't think Kadril was just like, yeah, I think Zeus is fucking bad. Like, he didn't even watch the video.
He's saying BLG is the best team in the world the entire regular season. He just loves BLG.
He's just looking at the tier list.
Right? Bin looked all right. I think there's not a point of BLG that looks that bad. Bin looked all right. I think there's not a point of BLG that looks that bad. I just think
what do you think? Like, this is I'm hanging on these words, bro.
BLG that looks that bad. I just think
so Bin looked all right. Like, I think the players are okay. Like, nothing looked bad on BLG. So what are we going to talk about with BLG? What is your point? What are you going to tell me that's going to make me believe that you know what the you're talking about?
I don't know, man. Knight didn't look that good. Knight didn't look that good.
Knight didn't look that good. I mean, Knight was literally MVP, by the way. Like, Knight is literally the MVP of LPL. I think there might be a reason, by the way, that he was the MVP of LPL. But moreover, if you looked at Knight and you saw what he did in finals, like what he was playing in finals, wouldn't that be some context as to why Knight didn't look as good as he normally does? It's like he wasn't playing champions that he is known for. Like, he played Asol as a counterpick to Azir when they were already up in the series. So it's like, you can say whatever about that game. Okay, he played Asol into Azir, whatever. His Asol, it's like his first competitive Asol game ever. And he is known as somebody who couldn't play Azir, and he played 2 Azir games. So 3 of the games that he played in finals were on champions that he wasn't insane at. And I think that, like, if they ended up in a do or die situation, he probably would drop those picks because they had an advantage in the series. They were able to play other things. They're able to open up different looks. And if that ended up getting countered, they have other options. Like, Ahri is getting permaban versus Knight. Knight has an insane Talia. Like, this is a champion that is, you know, essentially, like, it won't be permaban. Like, he ends up getting it sometimes, but every time that he gets it, it's because they're giving up a lot of, like, BLG has to give up things to get Talia. They have to blind pick it. They have to get it early. They have to be playing into Azir, something like that. So, like, Knight didn't look that good in finals is where we're going with our narratives. Like, oh, that's why I think that BLG isn't that good. Like, it's nothing about how the team plays. It's nothing about, like, how the teams are going to interact. It's so fucking, like, surface level, just, like, mentally ill. We're just going to talk just to talk and BS out of our ass for no reason. This is, like, all it is.
This is really all the teams at MSI. I mean, it's 12 teams, guys. It's a lot of teams for MSI. Why do I think T1 are going to smurf MSI? Because T1 always does the best at these tournaments where they have to play against, like, a wide variety of opponents. And I think T1 powers up over time as well. I think T1 has, like, a particularly bad matchup against GenG, but when T1...
Okay, so let's talk about this point here. T1 has been to the last 2 MSIs. They've lost the last 2 MSIs. This is not a tournament where you play against a massive field the same way that Worlds is. Like, their games in play-in, just because they play in play-ins and they get to play against more teams, that doesn't mean anything. They're going to play against play-in teams that absolutely suck compared to them. They're going to roll over them. It's going to be really fucking free. They're going to gain nothing from it. And then they're going to jump into the bracket stage. Once the bracket stage starts, it's like a 10-day tournament, bro. This is not like some fucking massive tournament where it goes on for months and months. So the whole idea that, like, yes, T1 powers up over time, part of the reason why I think that LCK does better at Worlds than they do at MSI historically is because of the duration of the tournament. Worlds is a much longer tournament, and you play it all on the same patch. So as time goes on, it feels like LCK is really good at refining themselves and really understanding the meta by the end of the tournament. MSI is a much shorter tournament, and it's very hard to adapt to teams like, for example, BLG, who play extremely aggressively. They play like no team in the LCK. With the way they bot dive, the way that they play to skirmish heavily, it's hard to adapt to that in a short period of time. So this whole idea of like, oh, this is like why T1 does well. It's like, okay, Worlds, that's a good argument for Worlds. That's a bad argument for MSI.
Powers up and essentially like gets going, gets good read on the meta, and like figures the draft out. They are like an unstoppable team. T1 MSI,
which literally like didn't happen last MSI. People are saying like T1 MSI. Like the reason why people are saying that in the chat is that was one of the things that people criticized T1 for at the last MSI, is that their draft read, because the tournament is actually not that long, was pretty shit when it mattered. Like they were hard indexing into this Nautilus mid for Faker, and it just didn't fucking work.
MSI is always cursed. That's why I didn't put them in something special. This is, I think, stage experience matters. Yeah, I
also think stage experience matters.
Luckily,
so much.
This version of GenG doesn't have that much young players. It's just base. At this point, I think GenG doesn't have the same.
BLG literally just beat pretty much like, okay, so BLG minus Yagao, or plus Yagao minus Knight technically last year beat this T1. Like, this team has played together for a while. It is this, and they play a very similar play style to how they played last year. Do you remember how those series went? Do you remember what happened when BLG played against T1 at MSI? They bot dove relentlessly in almost every single, I think actually in every single game. Maybe it was like 3 out of the 4 games, but I think in almost every single game, probably like 3 or 4 out of the 3 or 4 of the games, they executed a bot dive that got their bot lane ahead with their jungler pre-6, and T1 had no good responses to it the entire time. Every single time owner was not there to cover it. They felt like they were just not going to die. T1 felt like they could survive the dive, and they were just getting dove every single fucking time. This is a horrible argument for T1.
Same choke factor as before, because they have like a lot of veterans. Keen, Lehans, Canyon. These guys, God, they've been playing competitively for how long? Like in 5+ years each of them. Keen and Lehans have been playing for like way longer than 5 years. Paze is like the one guy where I'm like, oh, I don't know if this guy's gonna perform under the pressure, but they had veterans last year. Something
100%, bro. Peanut and like 100% Peanut and Dorian are mega veterans as well. We're like, what? Like, Peanut's been playing them for longer than Canyon by a significant amount of years too. Like, whatever.
What was wrong with that team where they just couldn't perform? Because at Worlds, like, GenG played T1 and smashed them. They literally played the world champions and smashed them in their game, and then like lost to others, lost to everyone else.
Who did they lose to? Oh wait, they lost to BLG. Dude, what a fucking dog shit video, man. We actually put out this content. We put out Doublelift reacts to Cagel's MSI tier list. We made literally 0 good points, and we just disagreed with it to disagree, and then said that like Kagel was paid by the CCP, or he's just trying to improve his social credit, and the only way you could see this tier list happening is if you're on drugs. Like, what the man? Can Doublelift please shut the up, man?